The Whitmore estate stood like a monument to wealth, grandeur, and power, its towering white columns and endless rows of windows reflecting the golden rays of a late summer morning as though the very sun had chosen to bless it, and inside its opulent halls life flowed with an elegance that most people could hardly imagine, where polished marble floors stretched beneath Persian rugs worth more than an ordinary family's yearly income, where crystal chandeliers caught the light and fractured it into rainbow prisms that danced across walls lined with priceless art, where servants in crisp uniforms moved with a silent rhythm as if rehearsing some elaborate ballet of discretion and obedience, and among them, barely noticed yet always present, was Rosa Daniels, the maid whose quiet diligence kept her nearly invisible in a world where invisibility was both a curse and a shield. Rosa was not new to labor or silence, having grown up in a working-class neighborhood where survival depended on humility, attentiveness, and strength, where she had raised siblings when her mother worked double shifts and learned to listen carefully, to see details others missed, because overlooking a small sign could mean danger, illness, or worse, and so by the time she was hired at the Whitmore mansion she carried herself with the calm, steady presence of a woman who had endured storms but chose not to speak of them. The Whitmores, of course, rarely acknowledged her beyond the occasional order or dismissive glance, for Nathaniel Whitmore, the patriarch, was a man consumed with business, empire building, and the constant hunger of the rich for more, while his young wife Amelia floated through gilded rooms like a delicate bird, her beauty the envy of social circles, her life a series of luncheons, charity galas, and whispered gossip, and when at last she gave birth to the long-awaited heir, the mansion erupted in celebration, gifts and flowers poured in, and the estate became a shrine to the fragile, tiny life of the newborn son, with nurses hired at exorbitant rates to manage his care, specialists consulted for his every cough, and Amelia's friends cooing over his every feature. But through all of this excess and attention, Rosa, moving silently with her feather duster or tray of polished silver, noticed what no one else did. It began subtly, the first night she passed the nursery and heard the child crying, not the full-bodied cry of a healthy infant but a strained, hoarse sound that pricked something deep in Rosa's chest, reminding her of nights back home when she had rocked her niece who struggled with asthma until her tiny body relaxed in sleep, and Rosa paused outside the door longer than she should have, listening as the nurse soothed the baby and dismissed the cry as fussiness, yet Rosa carried the sound with her back to her quarters, her instincts whispering unease. The next morning, as sunlight streamed into the grand master bedroom, Rosa changed the sheets and overheard Amelia laughing lightly with a friend about how tired the baby seemed, how he wasn't as lively as yesterday, and again Rosa felt the flicker of concern, storing the detail away the way she always had, piecing together signs others overlooked, because she knew too well how illness or danger rarely announced itself with fanfare but rather crept in quietly, disguised as ordinary, until it became too late. By the third day, Rosa had seen enough to unsettle her. The baby's chest rising with effort, the faint bluish tint around his lips when he yawned, the way his cries lacked strength, and though every nurse, every doctor hired by the Whitmores assured Amelia that the baby was adjusting normally, Rosa's instinct screamed otherwise, yet she hesitated, because speaking out of turn in a house like this could mean her job, her livelihood, her ability to support her own family back home, and she remembered the stern warnings given on her first day: serve. Don't interfere, don't question, words that pressed on her tongue now like a weight whenever she considered saying what she saw. Still, Rosa's conscience gnawed at her, keeping her awake in the small servants' quarters where the sounds of the estate felt distant, where she prayed quietly and remembered the lessons of her grandmother who had raised her: if your eyes see truth, child, your mouth must not stay shut, for silence can kill as surely as sickness. And with that memory, Rosa knew she had no choice, that she would rather lose her job than bear the guilt of silence, so when she encountered Amelia in the hallway the next morning, radiant in her silk robe but with dark circles beneath her eyes, Rosa summoned her courage, bowed her head respectfully, and spoke softly: "Ma'am, forgive me for speaking out of turn, but I think there's something wrong with the baby." Words that hung heavy in the air, startling Amelia, whose defensive pride rose immediately, her tone sharp as she demanded, "What do you mean?" "The nurses say he's fine," and Rosa, heart pounding, explained gently, "his breathing isn't right, and sometimes his lips look blue." Please, I think a doctor should look again," but Amelia, though shaken, dismissed her with a tight smile and the fragile authority of a new mother clinging to assurances, and Rosa bowed again, retreating with the shame of rejection yet still feeling that she had planted a seed of doubt, one that might matter later. And it was later that very afternoon when chaos erupted, when Amelia screamed from the nursery as the baby went limp in her arms, his small face paling, his body frighteningly still, sending nurses and staff rushing, voices rising in panic, and Nathaniel storming in demanding answers no one had, the trained professionals fumbling as minutes dragged with no clarity, and in that storm Rosa stepped forward, calm though her heart thundered, her voice clear as she urged, "Call a pediatric specialist immediately, he cannot breathe properly. He needs urgent care now," words that for once pierced Nathaniel's commanding presence, making him act without hesitation, summoning the best doctor money could buy, and when the specialist arrived and examined the child, his verdict confirmed Rosa's unspoken fear. The newborn had a congenital heart defect that limited oxygen, the very thing Rosa had seen in the faint blue lips, the strained cries, the weary stillness, signs that everyone else had missed but her, the maid who was not supposed to see, not supposed to know. Swift medical intervention saved the baby's life that night, and when the household finally calmed, when the child lay safe under careful treatment, Amelia sought Rosa out with tears streaming down her face, clutching her hands in desperate gratitude that words could barely contain, while Nathaniel, for the first time in 6 months, looked into Rosa's eyes not with dismissal but with solemn respect as he murmured his thanks, and though Rosa returned to her duties quietly, tidying, dusting, polishing as always, she did so with the knowledge that she had altered the course of this powerful family's life, that her courage had saved an heir, and though they called her an angel in whispers through the staff, Rosa knew it was not a miracle but the simple act of seeing, of caring, of refusing to let fear silence truth, and as she moved through the gleaming mansion that now looked at her differently, she carried in her heart both the weight and the relief of knowing that sometimes, the most invisible eyes can see what the brightest chandeliers fail to illuminate.